Okie dokie. We are conceptually live, assuming that everything is functioning as intended, which it rarely is, so see how this goes. Today I'm going to be doing a little still life just to get into the swing of this. All of this stream setup is new and a little on the janky side. So I gotta work out some kinks today, and hopefully getting this little trial painting done helps me work out some of those kinks. So we are going to be doing this cute little picture, pomegranate, some grapes, and a grapefruit, I would say, leaned up against a rock. I found this on Pexels, which is like a free website that you can use for stock images. It's not the greatest, but I don't really like to just steal images off the internet that like aren't listed specifically as copyright free. So that's where I found this guy. Usually I would take my own still lifes and stuff, but I just don't have the fruit for that. I just don't have the fruit for that today. So, one of the first things I'm going to do is, because this image is a little bit on the, this is the paper I'm working with, and the image that I'm working from is a little bit squarer than the page is. So I'm gonna tape some borders on. So I'm just using some washi tape. Taped on there, and I'll probably just raise it up a little bit so that it's not sitting on the bottom. My little drawing table here. Oh, and of course that is the end of this roll of washi tape. Great. Stick that. Well, maybe he would have made it. Nah, he wouldn't have made it. That's unfortunate. Say goodbye to him. I think I've got some more in here somewhere. Hey, and yeah, no Don't Starve today. Good boy Goldie is at his job, so it didn't seem right to play it without him, and while he's working, I'm trying to get a setup going so that I can stream painting, because that's what I usually do while he's away at work and he can't hang out with me. So I'll be painting today, but we've had a long break. We just had a lot of chaos going on in our lives, and then the holidays and everything, so we haven't been streaming in a long while. But hopefully this will get us both back into the swing of things. Alright, so I'm going to cut these edges in just a little bit closer because of the crop on this. See if I can get it a little centered. Probably like... It's not quite square, it's like a little rectangle, but it's not super rectangle. So we're gonna go... maybe slightly less. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be exact. This is just a study, so... if I was trying to do a photo to painting and I was trying to do something extremely realistic, I would straight up cheat and I would trace the exact ratios. But it's good to do exercises like this so that you are capable of seeing problems. Okay, now that I have that done, we're gonna put a wash on the background to get our background started. And I'm actually gonna switch you guys over to see my desktop. Oh, I've got the wrong camera attached to this. We don't want a palette cam. 1 second. You away. There we go. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Photoshop really quick. And you can see I've got our little study image up here on my monitor that I'm going to be referencing. And I pulled it up in Photoshop just so that I can do a quick little investigation of colors. So I'm just gonna grab this, which is the eyedropper tool. So anywhere I poke on this will show me its true colors. So just from my eyes, I can tell that the background color that I want is kind of like a warm gray. And if I poke the background, now down here I can open this and it shows me exactly what the color is. So it's a warm gray with a really slight orange tinge, like barely noticeable. And similarly, I'm just gonna poke around the image to see what kind of colors I'm working with. Sometimes you see something that's red and you think in your head that it's red, but I can already tell that this pomegranate has much more orange tones in it than true reds. And so you can see if I just poke around, this area here is quite orange. This area down here is pretty red, a nice burgundy. You can see there's a lot of orange tones in the reflections on the shadows. Really slight green in the highlight. Just gathering some information to help me decide what colors I want to get on my palette. It looks like some warm tones will be doing me better today with this guy than cool tones. All right. Sometimes what is that pomegranate standing on a toilet paper roll? This picture I just pulled off the internet. I pulled it off Pexels, which is like a free stock image place. I just typed in fruit still life, and this was one of the pictures that came up. So I'm not sure what it actually is. To me, it looks like a little like marble pedestal. What that would be for, I don't know, but one of the other things that I will sometimes do just to remind myself when I've done this color picking exercise, if I grab a color like this and it's a nice color, it's maybe more vibrant than you were expecting it to be, I'll grab the paintbrush tool and just make sure it's set to 100% opacity, bring the size down to something, and then I'll just like draw a little circle in that area. And sometimes I'll just do this beforehand for an entire picture. You can see the background's a pretty solid color. Like when I color the circle in, you can't really see it at all. There's not a ton of variation. And yeah, so I'll just go through, pick a color, kind of color a circle in so that I can reference this really quickly while I'm painting to decide if the colors that I'm mixing are really the colors that I'm seeing. The more you paint, you get a little bit better at this, and you don't really have to use a color picker. You can just look at what you're painting, and it starts to become really clear to you if you're in the right area or not. This is just a great little exercise. It also lets you kind of see what pigments you might want to use on your palette. If it's clear when you've got all these dots that a certain couple tubes of paint will make them. Orange there. So you can kind of see what the true colors are this way. It's a weird little green gray in the rock down here. So yeah, and now that I've got a bunch of these poked on there, I can see what I'm really working with. I will just save this quickly. And that way I can now leave Photoshop and I've got two versions of this going, and I can have two open. One that is my clear image and one that shows me a couple colors that I can reference to keep my mind in the right color zones while I'm working. Alright, let's get this back over to the painting cam. Decade hiatus is a vibe. I can barely spend a week without writing before I start to hate myself. Now more than ever, I feel the pressure to make things. Yeah, I have a kind of tumultuous relationship with art. I was very, very into all forms of art when I was in high school. You couldn't take a sketchbook away from me. I was constantly painting, I was constantly drawing. And I decided after high school that I was going to go to university for fine arts. And that ended up being kind of a bad decision. I ended up dropping out. I was not happy with it. I didn't know what kind of art I wanted to be making anymore. And after that, I just kind of fell off making it. I like didn't enjoy it anymore and I just stopped. And anytime I tried to pick it back up in the last decade or so, I've made like a little painting and been like about it and then just not really been able to like just sink my teeth back into it. Recently though, I've been going to a lot of like art and music festivals that have like amazing artists there, and I've spent a lot of time in the like art community on Twitch, and it just kind of like healed a bit of my relationship with art. And now I wanted to do live painting at some festivals because I've seen people doing live painting and it just seems like a really good vibe and a really good way to like be inspired and meet people and hang out with people while you're doing art, which is all stuff that I miss from when I did do it regularly. So hopefully this all continues. For the past month or two, I've been working pretty steadily. I've done a handful of pieces, some that were more of a commitment than any pieces I've done before, and they turned out decent, which I'm kind of a perfectionist, so saying they turned out decent to me, it's like, it's a big ask for me. Usually I see my work and I'm like, I kind of hate it. I don't want anybody to know about this. But yeah, so hopefully the trajectory stays strong. Neurodivergent and hypermobile, so I need to be doing multiple tasks at once if I'm being forced to pay attention to something. Sketch, write, work on homework. I can't be in school. That was a disaster. Yeah, I don't know that I'm neurodivergent, but I have very similar problems with not being able to concentrate on tasks. I would get in trouble a lot in high school for doing things like drawing during lectures, just because I pay attention better if I'm doing more things at once. Smart but not tameable. That could be a good way to be if you learn how to wrangle it in yourself anyway. But definitely there's no point in like trying to wrangle it to fit into like normal schooling society or anything like that. Like I said, I'm sure art school is really good for some people, and I won't say that I didn't learn anything there, but certainly I think coming to it fresh, like years and years later, just on my own terms, is very, very refreshing. Okay, before I get this background started, I'm working with a little wet palette here. I don't know if anyone watching knows what that is, but when you're working with acrylic paints, they dry out really quickly. And I have to take a lot of breaks when I paint because I have a like invisible disability where I suffer with like constant vertigo. So long stretches make me very nauseous. So I waste a lot of paint if I don't use a wet palette. So this is a wet palette and it's just a like sponge on a piece of plastic and you douse it with water. Get it good and saturated. It holds a surprising amount. You want it to be fully saturated, but not like much dripping left. And then you take your little piece of paper and you put it on top and you just kind of smooth out all the little bubbles in it. When you first start, it always wants to curl up on the edges and it's kind of a pain, but once the paper properly hydrates, it won't do that anymore. Just kind of keep poking at it. And now we've got a nice little surface that'll keep our paints moist for us while we work. And I was really surprised when I got this. Usually if I'm working without it, you put down some paint and you walk away for 15 minutes and the entire thing is just bone dry and you gotta re-up the paint and remix the paint. With this thing, I've gone to bed and just covered it up with its case overnight and woken up in the morning and it's all still completely usable, which is great. An official diagnosis only matters if it can provide you with something tangible. For me, it was helpful in healing, but a diagnosis doesn't fundamentally change who you are. Yeah, that checks out a lot. I don't struggle with a lot of the things I think a lot of people who get diagnosed with being neurotypical suffer with. So it's never been something I've pursued, but I definitely like check a couple boxes, and I definitely get a lot of like neurospicy content on my algorithms, and I don't know if it's trying to tell me something or not, but I also have a lot of neurodivergent friends, and I, for some reason, seem to get along better with neurodivergent people than non-neurodivergent people, so I don't know what that says about me, but regardless, it doesn't really matter. My life functions the way it does, so. We have to now decide what colors we are going to use. We'll just do the background first, so that's a guaranteed big glob of titanium white to start. Where can I keep my palette that you guys can see what I'm doing? Hopefully that works there. So we'll get a big old glob of titanium white going. And then we said, what did we say? It was slightly orange leaning. Let me take a look-see at our little picker here we did. Okay, I'm gonna go with a tiny bit of Mars Black. Which I know a lot of painters are like, don't use black, but it's fine. I think rules are it's kind of whatever. I could mix it. It's not going to make that much of a difference because we're not going to just mix this gray without adding anything to it. Let's see. This Cad Red medium and what are our yellows looking like in this? Use ochre. Okay, I've got this tiny tube of lemon yellow that I'm trying to get rid of because I hate having all these tiny tubes around, so we're gonna adopt that in there. Nods reassuringly. I would guess you are one of us, but I don't really like to diagnose my friends, but thought it wouldn't change reality to slap a label on it. That's very true. Okay. I need a larger brush than that. So, very quickly, I'm just going to mix a vague shade of not white, slight gray. Oh, I didn't put my red on the palette. Slight gray with a tiny bit of red and a tiny bit of yellow mixed in, just to warm the gray up a little bit. Could be doing this with a palette knife, but I tend not to like doing that for some reason. It feels a little weird on the wet palette too. Realistically, I think I went a little too warm on this. It's the black to gray it down a little bit further. And get this on the paper. It looks like the start is a little under a third. Say about there. It's looking pretty dark. Acrylics usually dry darker than they are wet as well, but a little flakies in this paint. So we're definitely gonna have to lighten this up, but I find it very beneficial to just get a nice layer of tone down on the canvas before I start fussing too hard about whether or not things are right. Really into visibility representation, though I make sure to let people on the spectrum early on. Also, it makes me feel less anxious and awkward. That makes a lot of sense. I have a similar thing with the disability that I have. Because I have chronic vertigo, I'm very good at handling it, and it means that it's not apparent to people that I'm with, especially people that don't know me, that I have an issue. And while I can probably get away realistically in full couple hour long conversation with someone without them noticing that I'm going through anything, I really get self-conscious at the idea that people think I'm like drunk or something like that, because I do have like stability issues, balance issues. I lean up against things a lot so that I don't feel unstable. And so I just like to tell people because it's less awkward than worrying about if they think I'm being strange for some other reason. And also, like you said, visibility. Visibility is a important issue. The more straightforward and like less weird we are about the problems that we have, the better it is for us all. Alright, let's lighten. I can see if I kind of squint at the picture. It's a little bit brighter in the upper right corner than it is in the lower left, so now that I've got this laid down, I'm just gonna lighten up the paint and start working in a bit of a blend towards the bottom. It's really difficult to blend with acrylics because they dry extremely quickly. So you kind of gotta just keep at them. And layer if you must. I also keep a squirt bottle handy and mist everything to keep a bit of flow and movement and stuff. See, one thing that I didn't do that I usually do or I do little studies like this is I did not gesso this paper. This is just like extremely cheap, like a dollar store, like acrylic multimedia paper, which totally does the job, but it doesn't love staying flat if you don't gesso it first. It also is not staying put with washi tape. Good news is I have some other tape. Chronic vertigo, but you like EDM. Is dancing more difficult or unenjoyable? I love dance. I'm super stimmy about movement. Yes and no. My vertigo goes in and out of, oops, lost my headphone. My vertigo goes in and out of how severe it is. I basically have it 24/7, but a lot of the time it's really mild, which means I can dance and stuff without issue. Most of the issues that I have with it stem from prolonged use of my eyeballs. I get a lot of like visual panning, and that makes me a lot more nauseous than the sensation of spinning does. I always have a sensation that I'm like spinning or on a boat, but I've had this for almost 5 years, and I've kind of trained myself to just kind of ignore it, and it's fine. It doesn't become that much of an issue. But doing stuff like painting or reading long-term, playing video games, over time it just starts to make me really nauseous. So I actually really like activities like going to festivals and dancing because it's entertainment without me having to actually look at very much. I can kind of glaze my eyes over and just enjoy the music and dance. It ends up being a good time. There are days when it would be bad enough that, like, balance-wise, like, I couldn't do, like, good dancing. I'd have to, like, just stand pretty, like, on 2 feet and just move my, like, upper body around, but on the whole, it's not too bad. This is gonna hold my guy much better. I should have just done this one. I don't like to use this on any valuable work because it has a tendency to rip the paper. Cheap paper curls. Yeah, it's a lesson in you know better and you should do the prep work that you know is going to make the difference, and then you choose not to, and you're like, yeah, I should have done that prep work that I knew would make a difference, but My other paintings I've done on this exact same paper, which I think are around here somewhere. Yeah, once they dry, they're not too bad. Like, you can see it's got like a bit of unflatness to it, but mostly it dried like fine, so yeah. It should be fine. I prefer to paint on masonite board, but then you end up with like a million paintings just like all over your apartment. Paper is just so easy to tuck away. Still not this much darker than I want to. Bottom area zoned in a little bit. I'm very much a trust the process painter. I know when I start painting, it always starts out pretty chaotic, and I think like there is no way this is gonna rein itself in to be anything valuable at the end, but it always works itself out. As long as I'm willing to keep fighting with it. I'm going to let this base layer dry and hopefully flatten up a little bit before I keep going. So, got a little purple fan that I keep nearby so I can aim it at things to speed the process along, because I'm impatient, and if it takes too long, I'll quit. All sorts of weird little symptoms that I don't really think about, but I'm pretty sound sensitive. I have trouble going to concerts or being in loud places. It's not debilitating by any means, I just have trouble focusing on anything when I'm at a restaurant. Just kind of take an edible and disassociate enjoyably. As long as you're capable of like coping with it and you have mechanisms like that to like take something that makes you find a way to enjoy it, it's not really an issue. You just gotta know where you're going to be uncomfortable and have coping mechanisms, right? I actually really like concerts in loud places, but it obviously depends on what it is and what the crowd is like. A lot of the EDM stuff I go to, it's extremely crowded and extremely busy, but people are extremely, they're cognizant of each other's space and are respectful. It's not like, I've been to a lot of emo shows because I listen to a lot of like emo music as well, and those crowds are like a lot of the time kind of toxic, and you get jostled around a lot, and it's just not as good. But certainly, for me, I wear like concert earplugs to shows and stuff, and I find the like very slight dulling of the extreme loudness helps a ton. You don't like strangers touching you? I don't have an issue as long as it's in the right place in the right setting. Like if I'm in a dance pit at an EDM festival and like it's crowded enough that like there's no chance you're not going to be bumping into one another and everyone around is being kind and not weird, then yeah, I have no issue. But it's a big difference to if like you're in a pretty sparse crowd and people are dancing like weirdly close to you for no reason and it feels kind of attacky. But someone touches you without telling you first, you'll freak out. You must just be a jumpy individual, but having like good boundaries set with people and stuff like that is just like a good practice to have. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking issue with random people just touching you with no warning. That shouldn't be normal for anyone, so. Getting there. You can tell when he's fully dry when he stops being cold. He's still cold in a couple areas. This bubbling is really gonna annoy me. If anything I can do about it. Why you gesso your paper, kids? Gesso the paper. Yeah, that's not going anywhere at all. Oh well. Does annoy me that the light of the bubbles is picking up though. I could get my iron out and iron it, but that seems like overkill. Since he's just a quick little study, we shall just carry on. So now I am just going to quickly block in where me shapes are. The background doesn't have to be perfect because I redo it usually as a final step to help carve out all of the work I've done, so we will now begin the messy progress of figuring out where everything lies. Just make a nice little tone here that kind of fits the vibe of the painting that I can work with. Thin it down and figure out where these things live. Up larger than that. I think it's still larger than that. I think this ends more like... Let's see. Grape. Batter side. And I'd say it ends about there. Which means this is much larger than I'm painting. Love watching something take place in stages, but also gradually. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the stages hurt when you're the one that is doing them, though. I have a couple parts of my paintings that are my favorite parts, and they're usually towards the end when everything starts to kind of come together and take shape. It's the beginning parts that it just feels like you don't know what you're doing the entire time you're doing it. Just end up having to make a million little micro adjustments. Alright. Guy ends there. Write poetry, stories, vignettes, the art I do these days. I'm also a professional editor for what it's worth, who knows. Any visual art I do is just me playing. I kind of feel the same way. I do a lot of other things, and after my university experience, none of this has ever been something since that point in my life that I've thought like, hey, a career in this would be a good idea for me. But I found a way to do it as something that I enjoy, and hopefully I can keep that momentum. I also sew. I do a lot of crafts. I can crochet. I do cake decorating. I basically, like, if it's an available handicraft, I've probably tried it or do it occasionally. I'm just a very crafty individual. But all of it I basically do for me. I don't do any of it for profit. Not that I know that anybody would want to pay me for it if I thought that was a good idea, but... It's a shadow that lives, like, here. It's supposed to come down quite a bit. Did you say that you're crafty like a fox? Oh, I would say that. I would definitely say that. Maybe this guy a little bit too low, I think. Let's correct him with some white. See if I can't get this little shape in as well. It's down the center, around in the middle. Get over here, then we've got them. This is a lot easier to do if you don't have to look very far for your reference. In a perfect world, I would have printed this out and had it sitting like directly above this, but I have to look like just a little bit over there, which the further your eyes have to travel between the reference and your canvas, the more you just seem to forget on the way. Are you currently working on creating a masterpiece of some kind? The biggest piece that I did recently was, I wouldn't call a masterpiece, but was the most ambitious piece I've probably done to date. Which, I don't, is it visible in here? I'll see if I can grab it. It's on my bed. And I was fairly happy with how it turned out, but I'm taking a break from like really big idea pieces for the time being and just working on a bunch of practice studies. But this is the last guy I did that was like an actual concept that I executed. It's a self-portrait of me being eaten by a fox, which is also supposed to be me. So he was a bigger piece that I actually had to like commit to. I had to take reference photos. I had to piece a bunch of stuff together, do concept drawings, and it just took like a lot more hours than this kind of thing ends up taking. Currently working. Do you view your art as a study? I always wonder if I should be focusing on self-improvement or just trying to do the work or setting a goal or finishing a project. I'm trying to go back and forth between the two. Because I just did that larger work and was happy with it, I'm kind of in like take a break and do some studies mode. Because I think I just could use the practice. I tend to put out better work as studies than I do on pieces where I'm like trying to create a concept, because I'm better at just copying something than I am at like having to merge things that don't really exist in a picture. And I think the more studies I do, the better I'm gonna get at that. So before I attempt like another large piece, that's what I want to focus on. But the, you'd consider that a masterpiece? Thank you. That's really sweet. I was happy with the way it turned out, considering it's the first, like, valuable thing I've made in terms of art in over a decade, at which point I was, like, essentially a high schooler, like, first year, second year-ish university before I dropped out. And at that point I wasn't doing anything creative, I was just doing, like, school studies and stuff. But I definitely, like, want to paint more things that have like artistic value. I just have really high standards, and I think I need to get my like my understanding of a couple things down better before I get there. I'm really bad at I'm great with objects, and I'm bad with backgrounds. I need to do a lot more studying on like landscapes and just like settings, because I can do objects pretty good justice, but I just like get tired with all of the like details in a background that you have to like approximate, and you can't get like exact. You have to like be a little bit impressionistic when you paint a tree. Like you can't paint 7,000 leaves on the tree. You have to make like a shape that just looks like it, and I'm just not very good at that. I'm a lot better at like I'm painting a seed, and the seed is this shape and rounded this way, and I paint that one thing like that, and it is exactly what it looks like. So I gotta kind of open up and get a little bit more background practice in, which is probably what I'll do in the next couple months. Just lots of little studies like this and little like landscape studies and stuff. In the background of my mind, I'm really interested in Lorca's belief that great art requires both madness and duende, the dark spirits of the earth that encourage madness, but I always have multiple projects I'm working on. Background is painting the effective shape, not the shape. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure, like, I do differentiate between being a good painter and being a good artist. I think I'm already a good painter. I'm just not that good of an artist yet, because I don't have the commitment to creating valuable like concepts and being able to put ideas together to make something that doesn't already exist. There's value in study in making a perfect photorealistic portrait that looks exactly like the photo that you used for reference. But that's being a good painter. It's not really being a good artist. Because you didn't really have to make any decisions to do that. You just have become a really, really successful and talented copier. And trying to like merge those two things is just a really tricky thing. Especially when, like me, like I like to do kind of photorealistic studies. And it's clear that they're successful or not when they're done. So when you paint anything that's not photorealistic, like I just struggle a lot more with deciding if the thing that I made was successful or not. It's too tough being good at things. Yeah, my life is really hard. But I think I think the technique can only get you so far. Like, I've been envious of artist friends of mine, certain people that I went to school with, who technically they were not as good as me. Like, they were failing their still life classes, like their life drawings were not, the proportions were wrong, they couldn't see why they were wrong, they weren't good at that stuff. But just conceptually, they had like something to say, and they had style, and they made things in a way that like was bold and like I personally just wouldn't like think of doing, and I just had such respect for that. But it's always a struggle when you see stuff that you respect in other people, but when it comes to yourself, you have an issue not holding yourself to kind of like other standards you have. So it's just a strange thing, art. Doing art and being an artist, just like, it's more than just like whether or not the picture you made you think is pretty or other people think is pretty. There's certainly like a lot of things that I've made that a bunch of people have been like, oh, I love it, and in my head it's like, yeah, but it doesn't look like what I wanted it to look like. It doesn't say what I thought it should say, and so you get kind of lost in the like the what you wanted it to be, because people can't tell by the finished product what it was supposed to look like. They just know what it does look like, and if they like that, then that's good. But if it wasn't what you were going for, then to you, you can't really like unsee what like you were trying to get. But if you are just doing it like I am for just fun and entertainment and challenging yourself, then it's not really that big. Alright, I need to get some blue on this palette because I can't keep painting without it. What do we want to use here? I don't know why, I tend to shy away from ultramarine, which is like the typical standard blue I feel a lot of people use in their palettes. I like phthalo turquoise, just because it leans a little more green than ultramarine does, and I don't know why I like that, but I just like that like greenish hue in shadows better than I like the like warm ultramarine hue. We should probably get some more white on this floor. Live in a post-technique art world. Poetry is a meditation on this. A lot of what I'm trying to prove about art in general stems back to this belief. Yeah, I agree. I've seen a lot of artists on here, on Twitch, that is, that, they paint in ways that in school would have been frowned upon, but their art is good. Like, it's, you can't argue that the finished product they put out is good. Especially stuff like watercolor, where there's, like, a traditional technique that you're supposed to, like, not add layers of white on top of watercolor. You're supposed to, like, work from light to dark in your paintings and stuff. I see people on here all the time just throw that concept completely out the window, and the final product that they make is fantastic, and so why was it a rule in the first place? It shouldn't have been. It's kind of silly. Everybody can kind of just do what they want, and that should be fine. I also think maybe I should get a brown on this palette just so that I don't have to keep, like, auto-mixing. Roar. Well, that could be fun. A little red ochre. A little red ochre is the brown? Yeah, alright. I can work with that. It's at this point, once I'm like kind of happy with the general layout of things, that I usually just pick a thing and try and get it right. Let's do... I guess let's do the pomegranate first. Process is completely conceptual these days because of postmodern and deconstructive analysis. For that reason, technique is completely subjective. What is good or bad is merely a product of organic human agreement and disagreement. But therein lies the interesting bit, because you are an artist on Twitch talking about post-process theory while painting very traditionally, but on camera. Maybe the art is the video, not the painting. Maybe I smoke too much weed. Maybe just enough. Maybe. Yeah, no, I agree. It's a question. Am I making art at all, or am I making entertainment? I don't know. It depends on if anybody thinks it's pretty or entertaining. I can't say that I expect anybody to think either thing, so... One thing I will say is that I definitively paint, especially with acrylics, I will say, in a way that I know my art teachers in university would have an issue with. They would get really mad at me because I don't like mixing big amounts of color and applying them decisively to the canvas. I like just mixing little washes and just layering them over and over again indecisively until they all work together to form something that's a decision. And like I said, they didn't like me doing that. And a lot of the paintings that I made back in university looked like crap because I was desperately trying to paint the way they wanted me to paint. And it just didn't feel natural to me at all. They'd also tell you that black paint is the devil and that you shouldn't use it, but I do, and I'm going to continue to, and there's nothing any of they can do about it. Get this gray area covered up. In the bottom left and bottom right of this pomegranate where I can see the most yellow tones coming through. So I gotta start trying to work a lot more yellow into those. Basically in this area down here. Area over here. Good question. It's worth 4 decent answers. Okay, we got Socrates in the chat. Gonna leave us with a bunch of thought-provoking strings of consciousness. Perhaps we're thinking about it too hard. I do find that when I think about stuff like that a little too hard, you get a little too worked into the minutia of it all, and you stop just doing. And one thing that I've gotten a lot better at in the last month is convincing myself to just do. You don't have to do good, you just have to do. Trust me, right now it's not doing that good. But it'll get there. We just gotta keep poking it. Don't put much stock in what a teacher says is correct. They're just one person after all. Best most can do would be to teach you to think like they do. Yeah, definitely. You can get pretty far with a library card and a good imagination. Honestly, for real though. And you don't even need the library card in today's day and age with like resources like Twitch and YouTube out there. You can learn a lot without having to get anybody else involved at all. And frankly, I do actually have a library card to my local library, and I exploit the hell out of that library card. I use it for ebooks that I read so that I don't have to buy physical copies of books, and I also use it like a Blockbuster. They have like a really big DVD section there, and I go there with my partner and we rent DVDs to bring home and watch. Because it just feels like more of an activity than just finding something on a streaming service. But yeah, there's resources out there in this world. There are a lot of good ones. We just all gotta go out and find them. I'm gonna grab a smaller brush. with the tip of this guy added in there. A really, well, according to my teachers in university, bad habit, but it's just my habit, I guess, of painting with unnecessarily small brushes for the thing that I'm trying to paint. But if it works, it's fine. Actually not sure I love the red choice that I put on this palette for this painting. I think I should have looked to see if I have something that... So it's a pretty true red, but it, like, to me, pushes in the blue direction really slightly, which isn't as good for this pomegranate as it could be. Make some, like, orange here to layer in here to try and bring it warmer. Honestly, the shadow on this side pushes pretty blue. It's like borderlining neutral black. And mix a little purpley area over here with some red in the blue. I'm having an issue with this stream setup where the way my camera is mounted above me is like unreasonably janky. But it just like keeps slowly lowering. Every time I like push it back up and like convince it to showing the right area, it just like slowly lowers itself back down over time. Poetry, it is really important to not repeat yourself in your words choice over and over so that your whole body of work feels samey. Someday I hope the rest of it gets published someday, but I'm curious if the world needs it or if it would even help. I don't want to end up in a gulag, but it looks like the first work that is getting published is really political. But hey, the dark spirits of Earth are telling me to get back to writing, so I probably should. Yeah, no, definitely. If your work is getting published or a certain one is getting showcased, I would assume that's because it's the one that is the most interesting to the people who have the ability to get things published and shown to people. And I don't think there's any issue with that stuff being political, especially considering the current climate of things going on in the world and the States. I also try not to get too political, but at the end of the day, I do have opinions on the way that things are going, and I think it's important to not be quiet about things that matter when they matter. So, say the words you feel like you want to say, whether you're worried about retribution or not. I generally find that for most situations you're gonna be fine, so you might as well. I have made the tip of this pomegranate much too small. I have to make it bigger. I know I said I was gonna continue to work on the pomegranate, but this purple that I mixed, I had a bunch of it left on my brush, and I could see that it was basically the color I need for the shadows down here, so I figured I'd just throw some of them in for the time being. This area down here needs to be a lot darker. Fruit is surprisingly complex in color and shape and texture, which I guess is why it's so traditionally used for still lifes. It makes you look at a lot of weird shapes that you don't really think of when you think of the fruit. Go down to an even smaller brush. Get the sky painted in. Like I said, it needs to be a little bigger. So that is out there. It's a little highlight that's living here. It's way too hard to that yellow. I need a bit of Kleenex. Pull a little bit of it out. Oh. I tend to have butterfingers with my paintbrushes. They get thrown around more than they probably should. little top edge of this pillar in where it meets the pomegranate. It's got like a really strange, it's like a red line. Which is pretty straight. So light edge in, because this is much lighter than the background. So and then let's grab okay, not too hard with that. This side is darker than the background though, so we do need to be fairly dark. And it runs across straight top. Kind of blends in a sort of rounded way. And meet them in the middle. Not really happy with the color. Okay, it's warmer on the left side and kind of gray. So this warm tone is good for the side. Fair in the middle. See that the white highlight part of it kind of curves gently. Trying to replicate that curve in there. this darker shade. Should wait for this to dry before I layer this on there. Okay, I had writer's block after my vignette that introduced me to writing the character, so I took my own advice and I made a scene list. I'm trying out fiction again. Hooray! Good for you! Whatever you gotta do to keep yourself interested in working. Oh, I've gone done and let my tea get cold. That's unfortunate. No, she's still wet. Song's kind of popping off. This playlist is just a guy on Spotify who goes by Panda Beats, who just makes a bunch of like royalty-free beats. And honestly, like, what a baller. Thank you, Panda Beats. Oh. Yeah, that's just not dark. Better. Problem is that is gonna dry darker and very harsh, so I'm just gonna blend it out a bit. I think that's pretty pure white. Picture I chose is turning out to be a lot fussier than I thought it would be. But maybe it's just me today. See, should not have gone over that one, it's still wet. Okay, the top. Need a very skinny black shadow and a very skinny red reflected. Some of this black over here with the brown tone I've mixed, so that it pushes towards the red direction. And then line. A little bubble in this paper is right underneath this. Making it kind of a pain in the ass. spots of this in where they're spots. Oh, it's just too dark. He just like cannot draw a line. Just need like the slightest little twinge of red in here. Alright. Yeah, I was really into esoterica and high modernism in college and have been working my way back towards human ever since, but before college I wrote short stories more than anything. It feels good to be back to writing something so logical and methodical as a story. I haven't done any writing, probably realistically also, since university. I also used to write a lot of silly little stories. They weren't good, they were bad. I don't think it's... Oops. Sorry, camera. I don't think it's something I would be as successful at as I am painting. I like this. This pole is just giving me trouble. I'm just not a fan of this pole. It's okay though, we'll just ignore the pole for now. And we'll come back to it later when we're not so mad about it. How many grapes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 back there, 1 up front, 5 back there. Is that right? Yeah, okay. For some reason I felt like I had more grapes than I was supposed to, but I do have the right number. Honestly, these grapes are making me hungry. I love grapes. Why they gotta be like one of the most expensive fruits? They're unreasonably tasty. And they're so easy to eat. Uh-oh. That's why you shouldn't hold your brush near your work while you're not looking at it. I just got a weird sound in my headphone. Why did I just get a weird sound in my headphone? What was that from? Are you low battery? Maybe. Okay. Put the other one in. Let me go back in there and charge. I haven't been using this headphone very much. I don't know why it's mad. But... One second, let me grab a charger. Ethan. He was low battery, so. Okay, why are you pausing? Why? Can you not tell? You're in my ear? This is altogether the wrong color, and I am aware of that. And I'll do something about it eventually. Just not right now. Let's get some color blocking in on these little orange boys. I'm assuming they're grapefruit, not actually orange. It doesn't help me mix well that my current lighting situation is not very good. I need to get like an overhead art light to set up above my overhead camera. It's a lot of like shadowing from different things that are not making this the ideal lighting setup. But it's not the ideal camera setup either, so I'm just gonna have to invest and get myself a proper camera arm. And maybe invest in one of those ones that has like a ring light attached to it that I can have sitting above what I'm working on. This is kind of a weird layout of a still life. This like wedge is just like floating in the air. I guess it's resting on this like lower piece, but it's resting in a way that to me says like you really had to work to get it to sit there. Sorry, I zoned out. Why were your stories bad? Because they were too straightforward. QS? Predictable? I was in high school. I think I just liked things that weren't very interesting. I read a lot of, like, bad YA back then, which, like, don't get me wrong, I still have, like, a bit of a soft spot for. But I was a huge reader in high school. I'm not so much anymore because with my vertigo, it's a lot harder for me to read nowadays than it ever used to be. But in high school, I probably read like, I want to say like 4 to 6 books a week. Most days I would finish a book. I did not sleep very much. And the books that I was reading were mostly YA or my dad's high fantasy and sci-fi collection from like the 80s, 70s-ish, which was just a lot of long, kind of uninteresting fantasy that like drones on and isn't particularly well written, but has like interesting world building. Anyway, that consumption just meant that the stories that I wanted to be writing were always, like, some fantasy-based, like, just silliness. And I think any poetry and stuff that I wrote back in those days was, I think just in general as an artist, with visual arts as well, back then I was a bit of a try-hard. I think I was working too hard to make the things that I was making mean something instead of just letting it happen naturally. But that's what it's like when you're like a high schooler and you identify as being like one of the artsy ones. The shape is all amuck. That's not right. That's not right at all. This has to come much better. Okay. stuff. Yeah, genre can be its own trap. If you never poke your head out, you never learn what is out there. Yeah, and one thing that like I value about myself as an adult that I certainly had a bit of an issue with as a high schooler is valuing diversity over like purity. There was a lot of rhetoric when I was younger, especially in scenes that I was in. I was an emo kid, and like there was a lot of like, oh, are you a poser? Like you wore pink on Thursday, you're not a real emo kid. And I think the art movements tend to have similar problems where you end up in a place where you feel like if you make realistic art one day and then you want to paint like anime or something the next day, that like you're not being true to a style, you're just like dabbling around and you're not being true to like one definitive style that should be who you are. And I just think that's kind of crap. I think people should be allowed to like what they like and like different things on different days and make different things on different days without it being an issue. I see a lot of artists who don't make as interesting or diverse of a body of work because they're so concerned with having a memorable style that they're not willing to showcase work that they've done that is just a study piece or just isn't in their style. And I just think that's silly, because we as humans, we can listen to country music one day and we can listen to death metal the next, and that's a totally normal and fine thing to be doing. We don't always have to pick sides with everything. And it took a long time for me to learn that and get to that as an opinion. In high school, I definitely remember thinking like, oh, like, I read fantasy novels, so I'm going to write fantasy and continue to only read fantasy, and my art was going to be fantasy influenced, and I, like, hated Impressionism, and I, like, hated certain streams of, like, indie music, and, like, it's all stuff that since, like, I've given its fair chance and come around to and actually love now, and so, like I said, I think it's just silly that we put that kind of pressure on stuff. Hi, O Lunar Shadow, how are you doing? I always assume that style is something they talk about after you become famous, so why worry about it? Yeah, that to a degree, but also, I just don't think, like, I understand from a marketing perspective. If you're talking about wanting to become an artist and market your work successfully, I understand why having a style is valuable. If you paint, like, beautiful, like, cozy cottage-themed watercolor works that are, like, in pretty pastels and they're sparkly and they always look like that, there's going to be a specific kind of person who loves that aesthetic and is looking for that aesthetic, and you're going to gain some kind of notoriety in a crowd that is looking for that aesthetic, and that's going to make doing things like selling prints, getting follows on Instagram, stuff like that, way easier. The problem with it to me is just that, like, I could easily pick a style of one of the styles that I was painting and try and just do that to market it and to get the largest reach in a specific, like, sect as possible, but it's just not fun to me. And part of why I didn't paint for so long is because it wasn't fun to me anymore. And so with a priority on keeping it fun, like, the priority is on, like, just painting the way I feel like painting in whatever style I feel like painting in that day, and not thinking too hard about it. So it's not to say that I don't respect artists who stick to style, because some people do just, like, the way they work feels good and they love making the same kind of thing over and over again, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's certainly more marketable than doing it a different way. It's just not something that, like, I would be able to do without getting bored of. like a nice burgundy undertone to fill the center of this grapefruit with. Deep red. I can never decide when I'm painting if I'm like gonna put the like shadows in after, or the shadows in like the deeper colors in first and then put the highlights on top, or vice versa. I think I just end up going back and forth over and over again for hours until it like comes together. I think a lot of people these days are getting really tired of the pressure of feeling like they have to always niche down to be successful. Style should be fun to you. Yes, that's how I feel. Genre and style are both tools to invoke however you choose. Exactly. A weird shape here. It's weird. I keep hearing a like really strange rattling on this one. I don't know what it is. My desk doesn't just collapse of its own accord any moment. I often put little jokes into my writing, both poetry and prose. If I'm not having fun, how can I expect a reader to endure? You'd be surprised, actually. I read some fantasy novels with not a joke in sight that I was not having fun reading, but I still read for some reason. I don't do that anymore. But yeah, occasionally sometimes things that are not fun but deeply interesting are worth fighting for when you're reading. But generally speaking, it's better to just read the thing you enjoy. Okay. I'm going to have to take a break soon. One, because I need a tea that is hot this time. And two, because if I don't, I am going to get too nauseous. Plus, it's always good to walk away from your work for like just a minute or two, and then come back and look at it from afar, so you can be like, oh yeah, that's not good. You gotta redo that. I didn't do a good job. I was really annoyed on the last piece I was doing, which was also just a little like life study of a like cauldron. Actually, I think it's my Be Right Back screen, so you'll get to see that life study when I be right back in a minute. And I was really annoyed because I had worked on it and it had been a number of hours and I was super nauseous, and I took a break to lie down for 20 minutes, and when I came back I realized like an area that I had just spent like probably 2 hours like getting all the little details finished on was just the wrong shape. Just completely the wrong shape, and I was like, do I just leave it? Do I just leave it? Can I live with it if I just leave it? And the answer was no, I couldn't live with it, so I had to repaint like the whole area and reblock out a shape and like redo it, and then spend another hour sticking all the little details in. But it was worth it in the end, I guess, to get it fixed. It always is, usually. You just don't want to do it in the moment. That same thing kind of happened with the that like self-portrait painting I showed earlier. That There were a couple parts that I was like, I don't know how this is going, and then I'd walk away from it, and I'd come back and be like, I've decided it's going poorly, that the thing doesn't work, and like I'm wearing like a gold pair of like striped slouchy pants in the portrait, and I just walked away and came back at some point and realized like it did not read in the painting like it should, given what it looks like in the photo reference, and so I just had to like completely like retake a new reference, like repaint over the entire area and redo them, and I was not pleased about it, but it's a good thing I did because it looks better than it originally did, and it would have looked messed up if I hadn't just convinced myself to put the work in to fix it. Like a shape up here looks a little bit wrong, but I agree. Anything to make the voices stop. Ooh woo. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta convince yourself. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick break. I will be back in, I don't know, probably 5 minutes. I'm just gonna grab a tea and run in tea and just close my eyes for like three seconds to give myself enough time to recombobulate. I will be right back. Okay. We can get back to painting now. I'm gonna put those little triangles in. Because I wanna. Everything a little spritz down as well. Okay, where do these live? Here. And... oops. Tapping my camera with my ears. Here. Cross and... way more orange. I'm really bad for dropping my paintbrush and getting paint all over the place. Yeah. I have really sore hands today because I went rock climbing last night. Whenever I do that, I just like throw my paintbrush around everywhere. What was I saying? Oh, I'm really bad for starting to put details into areas long before realistically I should be focusing on details. But I feel like if I don't do that, I get like so bored with like just slowly blocking stuff in over and over again that I like hate the thing and then I don't want to keep working. The minute you like put a couple little details in here, there, like magic happens and you're like, oh, it's starting to look like the thing. And then all of a sudden you like care about working still. At least that's how my mind works. I have to trick myself into continuing to work. Part of the problem is that this background needs to be brought in a bit. It would be beneficial to zoom you guys in a little bit. Sure. Too far. Take it back. Too far. Take it back. We always make little, like, messes in the background like this when we're recutting out the shapes of things, but we clean them up later. We clean the whole thing up at the end. We swear. We swears it. Need is put the line there, delete this, cuts around this. This needs to come down just past the tip, drop in lower. that up so that it's not such a harsh line. And there's... keep tapping that with my ears. Oh, the problems of a fox. My big ears. Okay, so we're trying to get this little area in here carved out better. It's not so dark. I just need a little kind of light brown situation. Dot in there. Lighten it up. Oh, let that dry for now. Can't live with this problem that we've made. Everything always darkens so much with acrylics. It's one thing that I love about other mediums. When you're working with oils and just certain other paints have properties that are just a lot more forgiving than acrylics can be. Oil paint, like, usually looks like what you put it on wet, it dries down pretty similarly. Acrylic, you just don't know what you're gonna get, and it makes mixing kind of a pain in the ass sometimes, because you think you've like matched a color, and then just like that, it just darkens down. And if I painted like a normal acrylic painter and just pre-mixed the like colors that I need in bulk, then maybe I wouldn't have this issue. Or maybe realistically I should just be painting with oils, but they're just such a pain in the ass. You can't rest your hand on the page, and like, you gotta get solvents involved. They smell like oil paints, and your whole apartment smells like oils. I do like them better though. Okay, we are missing a highlight that lives right here. Goes up like so. Here. And shade. Bring it into the bottom down here. Part of when you start getting closer to all the tones being in the right place, like this, it becomes a like exercise in how do I make the like texture similar without like sitting and painstakingly putting in a stupid amount of hyper-realism work. And generally I find just like little washes of squiggles kind of add a bit of that, like, textural depth over time. But I don't know. Like a weird little curved highlight in this shadow for some reason. Don't know what that's about. Stick it in there. I know that this like highlight I'm painting in right here like totally exists in the picture, but I just don't like the look of it on the thing. It needs like some extra depth making. And like on camera, this is reading as like a lot less vibrant than it looks in real life to me, which is interesting. Yeah, but it would totally be quicker to just take a pic of the reference with your phone, right? Yeah, that's true. You could just take a picture with your phone. I'm always fighting between, like, things I'm trying to do in an attempt to, like, practice and things, like, shortcuts that I want to take in an attempt to get things done faster. And if I was doing commissions, I would definitely just be taking the, like, path of least resistance. I think if you're turning this kind of thing into, like, a job, you have every right to just do whatever you gotta do to make it as fast as possible. But I got time to sit and fight. That's gonna dry a lot darker than that. This, part of the problem with this little guy is that he's very see-through. Keep layering some of this on top of him until he opaques up a little bit. All right, we need to thin him. We need to thin him down. Just ever so slightly. Put him on a diet. Put the toilet paper roll tube on a diet. That was a little bit better. see his old shape through there. It is way quicker than painting, yes. It does beg the question, why do any of us do this? When technically I already have the picture. I don't need another one. To be honest, I don't really need the first picture. I have no, like, need in my life for a photograph of a pomegranate on a toilet paper tube, let alone a painting of one. But here we are, for some reason. Poking away at it. Okay. In doing that, we get our little roll of his highlightiness. Stay like that for now. True cylinders and cones are one of the most annoying things to paint, in my opinion. Deeply annoying. In oils, it's not so bad because everything stays nice and wet. You can just like slowly blend them all together. But in acrylics, like, it's just such a like lovely subtle gradation in real life and in photos, and it's really hard to replicate with paint. At least with thin layers of acrylic paint. I could put like a really thick chunk of it on here and then kind of mix it like oils, but I'd have to work really quickly, or I could use like the slow dry acrylics that I use sometimes, or add like a retarder or something to it so that it would dry slower while I was working. But the problem with that is that I put way too much black in that. The problem with that is that I like my acrylic paintings to have a similar texture across the entire top. I don't like there to be like thick, chunky areas that are really glossy and then thin, like lower areas. And that's what happens if you like end up using too much paint to try and mix wet into wet with acrylics. Is if I did that with this cylinder, it would be all thick and chunky and you'd be able to see the texture in it, and you wouldn't be able to with the rest of the painting. Kind of odd. Which you can kind of work in a bit more similar if you varnish at the end, or just paint like a high gloss over the entire thing to kind of match it all in. But instead I just fight with tiny crappy little layers like I probably shouldn't. But who's gonna stop me? You guys gonna stop me? Is it cold or am I under the covers? Brr. Muckleberry, welcome. That's one strong kitty cat. And he's got a rainbow head. I'm for that. I've been very into, like, pastel rainbow reflect stuff lately. I have, like, a Pinterest board of, like, inspiration for paintings that I might want to do, and, I have a bunch of stuff in this apartment that I got that, like, is really reflecty. Like, there's some beads that hang on my mantle that, like, when the sun hits them, they send, like, little rainbows everywhere. And I'd love to do more paintings that have that, like, fun, sparkly prism refraction vibe. but it's a pain in the ass to paint. Huge pain in the ass to paint. So I've been thinking about it in my mind and not doing it in real life, which it's the way. You just think about the stuff you want to do. You don't do it, you just think about it. Only think, no do. Instead, we just painted grape. Garden variety, non-rainbow, non-refracting, no sparkles grape. Okay, I know that there's a highlight here, but I'm gonna just paint over it so I can get this shape. I'll put it back in after. The problem is now that we make this shape, we realize that like there's a piece of this tube that we painted that is now missing in that hole, and we gotta paint it in. Also, the grape in the reference photo comes out to the left a little bit further than this tube, so we gotta give it more grape. Also, shape-wise, it's kinda taller. It's kind of taller than the grape I'm working with here. Come in a little bit taller. It's still not quite the right shape. Needs a rounding at the bottom. Here. Fatter on this side. And it's looking closer. Okay. Okay, shape-wise, I am much happier with that. Color-wise, we've made it far too mauve. He needs more blue. Tea time. Okay. We waited slightly too long. The tea is, in fact, slightly cold. It's not, well, okay, cold. We'll just stretch. It's not cold, it's lukewarm. When you try and drink a tea when you're doing something, you always miss the sweet spot. It's just what happens. You only get the sweet spot if you make the tea and you sit and stare at it until it's perfect and then you chug it. Okay. Let's fill in that little gap that we made. And ruin the congruency of the nice tube we established. Let's get these other grape shapes nailed down. So that one meets here. comes out a little further than we have it. He gets a little fatter just at the top here. Before he slopes gracefully down. And he kind of takes a bit of a sharp turn at the tip. Right there. He just falls off. He's like, nah, we're going down. And then there's a little roundy olive-y looking thing. And this comes around to shadow. Just grab some water and round that whole mess out. There. Oh. Yeah, almost pleased with that grape shape. Probably fussing for something that realistically nobody would notice, but and then this one comes down. Definitely goes in behind that for a ways and comes back out here. Maybe not quite so low, actually. So... and up. Oh, I see what the problem is. This guy needs to come in here more. Like so. And that comes out. It's pretty globular. Okay. How about you, mister? You're already way too far to the right. He starts... Ooh, that's very off. Let's see. Comes down from the side and that reaches that. Okay, that is correct. And that basically bisects this grape. So, this grape needs to be more here. Like so. So some white and just erase some of the mess we've made over here. And then tuck this up a little taller. I fuss with the stuff even though, like, at the end of the day it would have just looked like grapes whether I fixed it or not. Mostly because sometimes you're painting things that aren't grapes, and then it does matter. If this was a face or an animal or something and you didn't fix it, then it ends up looking crazy in the end. Oh, this grape is also very round, so I don't know. Find his roundness. Find his shape first, and then look at his values and the rest after. See, this is the thing. When you work with a wet palette, sometimes if one corner peels up, it all just starts to peel up. I don't know how this shifted so far in that direction. You gotta like try and make it go back down. Stick yourself on there. If I had been more proactive about slowing this down, this probably wouldn't happen. I feel like if you bought larger sheets and like wrapped them around the sponge on the sides, you wouldn't have this issue. But this guy came with like 100 of these little sheets, so they're getting used. And pretty round. Move this somewhere where you guys can see a little bit more. I do have a like palette cam hooked up, like a separate palette cam, but it's like really bad quality. It's a like older webcam that I have, and it honestly just looks worse than you only being able to see part of the palette in the corner here. Let's just clear some of this out. And pump in that missing grape, which comes from here. And he comes out a little bit past this. Just slightly. And then we might as well lighten this grape up. Too light for that guy. Whatever. It's what he gets. It's just what he's getting. Okay, and then tiniest bit of blue. Okay, that wasn't a tiny bit. To red. To burgundy it up. Okay. Three in here is just all grape. It's like this grape technically sits on top. Probably realistically could have picked a photo with a simpler layout for today's study. The problem is sometimes when I'm looking for references, I don't want to paint something that I don't think is visually interesting as a composition. So when I find a picture that's just like a single apple, I'm like, come on, we can do better than a single apple. But then as I'm painting, I'm like, well, we could have done a study that only took like an hour or two, instead of a study that's going to take us a while. This one does come front. And this guy comes front at this one. Okay. It's kind of an interesting, like, yellow undertone. Where I picked up that white from. Spinning water. Oh, it was on my. Let's see. It was on a paper towel. Yeah, we've got some really nice, almost yellow reflex in the bottom of this front grape. I should probably pick up a bit of color to put in. Also have a couple interesting like highlights. Alright, pick up some of this orange, add it in. The other ones don't really quite have as yellow a tone. This one's got a tiny bit, but it's a lot more red. I'm just gonna put a lighter orange shade under and then coat that over the top with some red. here is very deep in purple. So is the area behind it. So I'm just gonna mix this red into some of the phthalo blue. Use it to get a nice deep purple in here. On this guy as well. So I think it could still be bluer. See how it dries down. Darker in this little crease. In here. Their highlights could certainly use a little bit more powerful highlighting. Very frustrating process today. I'm getting a wee bit discouraged. And I think it's probably because I'm doing the thing that I shouldn't be doing, which is striving too hard for perfection and not letting myself get more painterly and more interested in just replicating values. The shadows in on these grapes. Maybe that'll make me feel better. Done and made this shadow too dark. It's a bit better. Altogether too gray though. How did that happen? Needs more brown. Okay, that was too much brown. Take it back. It's just slightly out to the side. triangle of pure white in there, and then the rest of it is this way. Balls. This one strangely does not have a little triangle. Trust that and just fill that area in. It's got like the slightest sliver of white, but this triangle is kind of filled in. It's pretty dark. That's better. It was too much brown originally. I'm not a fan of how steep this is. Just around it's like. Okay. Grapes are sort of working themselves into something. Spraying my palette enough. A couple of these are forming skins. Need to work some vibrancy in. So just like a shape here though. I want it pulled just slightly out. Paintbrush isn't good for that though. Okay. More vibrancy, more vibrancy. Straight sheer red over the top. This area here is much too gray. It's not that white either though. It's too purple is the problem. It needs to be, yeah, this orange is closer. It needs to be a nice fairly red orange. Redder still. Pretty good. Sammy color. Did I take a picture of this on my... Pretty good. Honestly, it's a little on the vibrant side, but that's what happens. It's definitely some of the same tone in and around this highlight, but it's gonna be pulled out. It's a little better. To be lighter in this under area as well. Maybe not that much lighter, but shear it out a little bit. It's a little bit of a reflection-y reflection at the bottom here. Squint at the picture a lot to try and get a better idea of things. But it means I make a silly face. I don't see. Yeah. We need a little bit of yellow. Squidged in there. Squidge her in. Everybody out of the way, we gotta squidge her in. A little bit down here too. Not right down. I thought it would. It's okay, we cover it up with the vibrancy. Where'd my little roundy brush go? My favorite filbert. lemon yellow is really nice and sheer. So you can kind of paint it over areas and just blends in nicely. I should have picked a more sheer red. This one's, it's not super opaque, but it's more opaque than the yellow is, so it's not blending in as nicely. I'm aware that this is a lot of little mindless fussiness. I think that's too much. It's better. This needs just a little bit more. Start putting some stipply bits in, and when you get to these last layers in an area, you want to start just kind of add in strange little brush strokes. Otherwise, the whole thing will look a little too smooth and round. Back in the little hairs on the top, the pomegranate's looking alright. He does have, still needs just like a little bit in there. Still like maybe too much. Something that's slightly amuck with the shape just here. But I'm not gonna fix it because it's... No, I'm gonna fix it. I'm a liar, I'm gonna fix it. I don't want to fix it, but I'm gonna fix it. Just needs to come out a little bit fatter before it goes down. Yeah, just like that. I'm gonna have to put another layer or two on that though, because it's sheer. It's sheer. Okay, the grapes and the pomegranate are getting somewhere. We must now turn our attention to these silly little grapefruit chunks. I'm going to grab another tea and take another quick break. I will be back shortly. And then I probably only have like, I don't know, another half an hour left in me before I call it quits for the day. I will be right back. Okie dokie. I am back. I have a tea and a cookie. Now I have to decide if there are any major discrepancies between the shapes I've made here before I start painting. I can already tell there are. The bottom of this needs to fatten out quite a bit. Because he tapers in the picture he tapers in here on both sides a little bit. And he doesn't really do that here. This needs to come down. Shouldn't paint and eat while I'm doing both, but it's better, but the problem is that the inside now needs to be over. The entire thing does. That's unfortunate. What's my center gonna be? Okay. That's my center. Let's head over a little bit. So it kind of gets fatter at the bottom. Just take some white and just block. So. Block this. Stay skinny until about there. Okay. Down there. Dropped a chunk of cookie on the floor. Crumbs everywhere. Not to be done about it. Okay, do you like the look of that better? It's still a little... This? Okay. Who's with this line right here? Some light on it. Looks like we already have tried to improve this once. Comes down in a little bit. These vague background colors so that it's not such an obvious correction land. That's coming down disturbingly. Get her in there. Still something amok. Working really slowly today for some reason. Should be a lot further along than this, but what are you gonna do? It's a good cookie. Many thanks to my spouse for making me that good cookie. No, I think this is the other. Okay, let's get some orange build down here. And then this line here is pretty straight. And it curves. And I think kind of slopes generally downwards. And then this area needs to come a little bit lower. And then it has to go slightly up. And then barely straight. Okay. Who's buzzing at me? Oh, it's nothing. Nothing at all. My tea is too hot. Let's put this rock in the background, why don't we? Comes out. Tip. There. 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 It's down to about there. There. It's hard to care about the shape of a rock. Very hard indeed to care. The thing about a rock is it usually just looks like a rock. Whether you did it right or not. And there's a lot of shadow. There's a lot of shadowy things. Say, like so. Let's just put it in for the sake of knowing where it lives. Not forgetting all about it. There's also a shadow. Biggest one here. And then this one comes from behind and up. See, as we've added paint to this and it's slowly dried down in layers, it is no longer that bubbly. There's still a slight bubble right here. Still a little one. Very frustrating, but if I had gessoed it in the first place, we wouldn't have had any of that bubbling happening at the beginning. Which is my own fault, and I would love to say that I learned my lesson. Only time will tell if I did though. Okay, and shadow-wise, let's just block this in. There's kind of a B shape. There. And honestly, that's kind of it, so. You kind of want to put this strange little marbling on here. Probably I'm gonna live to regret it, but my fan go. Yeah, we already kind of lived to regret it. Why don't? We roll 15 times before I find it to be an acceptable color. Problem is that the marbling on it is so, like, arbitrary. Down. Hazard a guess that I'm not gonna like it. I hate what's happening here. I don't know. Basically, this whole thing needs to be brighter. Probably would be getting a lot better results if for this specific area I got out some zinc white instead of the titanium. I'm not gonna. You guys can't make me. You know what, I don't hate that. I don't know if it's gonna dry and stay like that, but I do need a little brush to clean up this corner. Because it just doesn't come out that far. Also, I can like vaguely see its roundness. Just vaguely. Song's kind of a pop. Oh, what's over? Come back, song. I was just complimenting your boppedness. If only I can get this like tiny red line in without fucking everything up. Or even smaller. Extreme detail brush. Probably should have waited until that dried completely before I put that in. I'll wait now. I'm sorry, I'll wait now. I gotta do something about my posture, man. I'm a hunchy baby. Oh no, my tea. red. And then you cut the red with the black. And the black, according to the picture, comes out. It also comes up and becomes a little straight, almost rounded. And then we cut some red vibrancy top of all that. Okay, probably put it on grindy instead of straight cat red. Yep, that was a bad idea. It's a bad idea. Alright. We'll pull it right back off. It's fine. It's fine. Actually, maybe if we just blend it in. Add it up a little higher. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. And let's touch that black a little higher in, a little rounder in. Okay. We squint, we can see shadows need to come this way more. It's reading. I don't know why this camera does this. Okay. Part of this is looking decent. The other part is looking sad and forgotten about. But it is 5:30, so we've been live for, what, 3.5 hours? I think it's time for me to call it for the night. I'll pop back in the next couple of days probably to try and get the grapefruit up to snuff. I'm not particularly happy with this progress, but I am happy with the lack of any complete chaos happening with the stream setup. I was really worried that this camera was going to just keep lowering slowly, and it has a little itsy bitsy bit, but when I was trying to set it up earlier, it just kept falling and falling, and now it doesn't seem like it's doing that, so we're doing pretty good. I'm not terribly mad about anything, so. what I've got to do is, oh no, I gotta change that one looking at it. Sometimes you like notice something that like you've put in that's just way off and you're like, I gotta fix it now. I gotta fix it now. Of this thing are. My filbert's sitting in the water like that. It's a bad habit that's very hard to break. Dark. Very dark. Triangle. Oh. Have gone, done, and fixed those shapes. I think that's a bit better. Although I'm pretty sure like this right here needs to be like longer, but I didn't really leave myself enough room for that. I'd have to shift like the orange that way a little bit. And it's not worth it, it's just gonna be slightly closer. Slightly stubbier, the rock on this side than it is in the picture, but it's just a rock, guys. It can be whatever shape it wants. At any rate, what I'm looking at here, days today, Wednesday the 5th, was Thursday the 6th. Okay, I might be back tomorrow to stream. It kind of depends. My building is doing like fire alarm testing in the morning, and they need access to the apartment for it, which is a really big pain in the ass, but they were like, it'll be after 10:30 at some point. So I can't stream until after they come and finish with their fire alarm testing, and I don't know if it's going to be something that they're going to be on time for, or if it's going to be like 3 p.m. before somebody shows up to deal with it. So if it happens quickly and it gets tested, and by like noon or 1 p.m. I'm ready to go, then I will be streaming tomorrow. If not, I probably won't be streaming till Saturday. In the evening. I have some time on Saturday in the evening, so thanks anyone who's been sticking around. Thanks anybody who has given me something to chat about. Appreciate y'all, and hopefully I will see you soon. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye!